That evening, I returned home a little later than planned. I had to go to a meeting I didn't really want to go. The two people I was mediating between were, frankly, not very pleasant people. Both wanted to cause each other as much pain as possible. They weren't interested in resolving the situation. They wanted to hurt each other. I could understand why. From a business perspective, the situation was disastrous, but my job was to find a compromise where both sides could walk away feeling they had gotten what they wanted. This is virtually impossible in situations where one or both parties are more interested in hurting the other than in resolving the situation, or worse, when the resolution itself causes pain. No one walks away from such a situation satisfied, I can tell you that for sure. More than once, I have had to admit defeat and simply tell both sides that at this stage, it is necessary to bring in lawyers because only resentment toward the other will help resolve the situation. At least in situations where both sides are trying to hurt each other out of blind rage and resentment, there is a chance that one of them will come to their senses. And that's where I come in. I suppose it's customary to introduce myself. My name is Mike Absalom. I work as a mediator, and, if I may say so, a good mediator, for a company that law firms hire as arbitrators. Most of the time, our work involves contracts. If a contract is broken, instead of running to lawyers, the two sides, or three or sometimes four, come to us. We sit down, try to understand the situation, figure out what each side wants, and try to reach an agreement. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. What we do has no legal force. We conclude an agreement in the spirit of the law, not according to the law. Sometimes what we do takes the form of a contract, but mostly it's a way to bring people together and find a solution to their problems. It's not so much the letter of the law as the spirit of the law, if you will. Yes, that's what I do. I've always done it in one form or another, and I have my own particular approach to it. I come from a large family, 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl. I was the second oldest and seemed to be constantly mediating disputes. My mom was a single mom. Our dad died 2 days after Benji, the youngest, was born. He was killed by a drunk driver who ran a stop sign after buying flowers from my mom. She never got over it, but she threw herself into taking care of us. She did everything she could, but the reality was that even with 2 parents, it would have been difficult to provide a roof over our heads, clothes, food, and attention for all 6 of us, let alone with one parent. She ran her own business selling real estate, and we were what our generation called errand kids. We would come home, make snacks, watch TV, tease each other, and I always ended up in the middle. Mediation is an interesting profession. I didn't plan on choosing this profession, it just happened. At first, I worked in a factory and a workshop where they made metal parts for all kinds of things. Golf carts, ballpoint pens, anything that had small metal parts, we made the parts for them. In short, I was the voice of reason on many issues and made decisions when necessary. I don't know why they chose me. Maybe I was the smartest. Anyway, I worked in a metalworking shop in college when I was taking a creative writing course. Yes, I don't know what I was thinking either. And there was a conflict between management and the workers. Some of us were union members, some weren't. I wasn't, but somehow I ended up being the workers' representative. We had a union representative and he would show up sometimes, but half the time when management wanted to talk to the workers, he was nowhere to be found. Part of me still thinks they, management, did that on purpose. In any case, I spent a lot of time negotiating, and although I felt that management was taking a hard line, we managed to reach an agreement. 4 months later, it all happened again, the same thing, the demand not to take vacation in August because there was a big order or something like that. In any case, this time they brought in an arbitration company, which basically did the same thing I did, only without bias, as management put it. It didn't really matter. In the end, the arbitration company talked to me and the union representative and then simply passed the case on to management. All they did was act as a mediator. We avoided trouble, as management put it, and everyone got something out of it. I know what I got. I got a job offer at the arbitration company, so in college, I switched my major to business and psychology and went to work for that company. It definitely made my life easier. 2 years later, I graduated from college and have been working as a mediator ever since. And believe me, I've had to mediate some of the strangest cases. Movie companies and actors' agents, car companies and their employees, law partners, even a group of surfers and the company that organized their competition. I've even officiated at a few weddings. I wasn't trying to be a marriage counselor. I assumed these guys knew what they were doing, and I just showed up when everything else failed and the CD collection needed to be divided. However, I do have my own methodology. It works for me, but not for everyone else. People respond when they see vulnerability and honesty, so when I act as a mediator, I try to show people my vulnerability and honesty. I sit down and talk to both sides independently, trying to understand what kind of people they are, what's important to them, how they feel about the situation, what they want out of it, what they think about the other side. Basically, I try to understand both sides of the conflict. I must say that my senior partners have often criticized me for using this terminology, but this is how I start working with clients, and it works for me. I just have to keep quiet when I use these words. I usually manage to find a way to get each side to think about what is important to the other side. This may not match their perceptions, or it may, and that is precisely what is causing the conflict. In any case, it is important that they understand the other side's needs. Orson Scott Card, a well-known science fiction writer and religious fanatic, once wrote a story about a girl who could see the connections between people. She saw them as lines of force creating a network between all people, and she could see how to break those lines with a few well-chosen words. And another thing, how can it be that some people can be monstrously intelligent, write incredibly coherent stories with interesting characters and great dialogue, and then have an incredible blind spot in their lives where they believe in invisible people living above the clouds? I just can't understand it. When I read his story, I noticed similarities between what I do and what this fictional character does. I don't see what connects people, but if I try hard enough, I can usually figure it out. And my job is to either untangle existing connections or create new ones by removing the old ones. At least that's how I see it. In reality, it's all just emotions, and I can't convey that to others. And it's certainly not a skill I practice at home with my wife. Oh yes, my wife. We haven't even mentioned her yet. I know it's a little frivolous for an article in the Loving Wives section, but I need you to have some idea of what I do and how I do it, because it will matter later. Do I need to describe myself? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do this? When I read a story, the last thing I care about is what the protagonist looks like. Okay, fine. I'm 5'7" and weigh 195 pounds, at least I did a week ago. I drink vodka, I like wine, I ride a bike. And yes, my hair is starting to thin and I definitely have gray hair at the temples. Damn, old age, isn't that enough? Do I need to go on and on about the color of my skin? Or how clean-shaven I am? Or some other nonsense? Who cares? Are they interested? I'm fine. Oh God. So my wife, yes, I have to talk about her. The love of my life. I know that's what everyone says, right? But it's true. It's like when people say about children, you're so lucky to have kids. Those are just words for people who've never had them. I find this whole tradition of announcing that you're going to have children very interesting and a little funny. You say, we're pregnant, and even that makes me smile. We? I'm just having a great time, and from that moment on, it's 100% hers. She's going to raise the child, endure discomfort, give up alcohol, go to the bathroom a lot, and finally go through the humiliation of childbirth. Not to mention the physical problems that can arise afterwards, from stretch marks to postpartum depression. And this guy is handing out cigars. Yeah, you've got a lot on your plate, asshole. And all your friends tell you, go get drunk, you won't be able to when the baby's born. Go to the movies, you won't be able to when the baby's born. Go eat, you won't be able to when the baby's born. Go to sleep, you won't be able to when the baby's born. And my favorite, go have sex when the baby comes, you won't be able to. And at the end, they add one more thing. But it will be the best thing in the world. Yeah, that's exactly how it sounds. It sounds like a great line. I mean, so many people say it, so they must mean it, but damn it, they give you all these very clear and specific reasons why it's going to be awful, and then at the end they say, but it's great. It's the best thing ever. And I can't help but notice that there's no specifics. But given how I feel about Christy, I can totally believe it. By the way, that's her name. She used to be Christy Fenton, but now she's Christy Absalom, at least for the next couple of months. At least that's how I felt about Christy, and that's how she felt about me. When the conversation turned to children, I realized that my jokes at the party had been true and grim. For us, the prospect of having children didn't make sense. During her first period, Christy experienced severe pain and women's problems, as she put it. Her parents took her to the hospital, where they discovered that her fallopian tubes were deformed. Surgery was required, The tubes were tied, and the ovarian parts of the tubes were removed, because otherwise her periods would be painful at best and life-threatening at worst. Apparently, she was told that it was cancer waiting to happen. So they were removed, and with them any chance of Christy ever having children. By the time we were together, she had come to terms with it as much as any woman can. In my opinion, a woman is not a woman if she cannot perform one of the most basic female functions. I don't know if I believe that, but in Christy's case, I knew it was a dark vortex that neither of us wanted to look too deeply into. That was fine with me. I loved children and believed they would be part of my future. But when it came down to choosing between Christy and children, I decided I had no choice. We talked about it a lot. And a few years ago, Christy even said we should use donor eggs, combine them with my sperm, and use a surrogate. We looked into it, I got tested, turns out I'm a swimmer, and even started looking for a surrogate and researching the process. But I was never sure about it. Something wasn't right. Christy was enthusiastic, but when it came time to take action, I just couldn't do it. I don't know why, but something wasn't right. It wasn't until Christy passed out and I refused that I realized what the problem was. Christy felt an irrational sense of guilt for not being able to have children, and surrogacy was her attempt to make me happy and what she considered punishment from God. I don't know where it all came from, but it was there. And it took therapy to get my head together and start healing. But you do what you have to do. I knew something was wrong, and my subconscious seemed to know more than my conscious mind. And if it wasn't a mistake then, it certainly was in this case. So there were no children. We never adopted children. That didn't feel right either, though I don't know why. And we decided that if we were meant to be childless, then we had to accept that. We traveled, saw the world, ran with bulls, had breakfast at the foot of the pyramids, played hide and seek in the ruins of Pompeii, went scuba diving in Pearl Harbor, drank wine in Napa Valley for weeks until we passed out, and jumped off a bridge in Sydney Harbor. We lived life to the fullest. Old friends drifted apart when they had children. They had a different life, and we all knew it. We often said we should get together. And at first, we even tried. But no one could. No one could find a babysitter. And if they could, they had to be home by 11 and couldn't even get properly drunk because they had to be sober to take care of their kids when they got home. When they left our apartment in the center of Bellevue, a wealthy suburb of Seattle, we looked at each other, giggled, and said, "It's a good thing we don't have children." It was a little sad, and we were clearly hiding our emptiness, but we were drunk and then had slow, lazy sex on the balcony. We were on the third floor, so we weren't afraid of being seen, and that had its advantages. Everything was good between us. I had my job, which was sometimes very stressful, and she had hers. She was a curator at a technology museum in Seattle. It was funny. She was into all kinds of gadgets like iPhones, iPads, Fitbits, and other things that are traditionally considered masculine, while I loved classical music, sculpture, and opera. We often joked that we had swapped brain parts, like in that episode of Star Trek, the original series, of course. My sometimes nerdy wife enlightened me on this, don't worry. We've been married for almost 12 years. We met at a field hockey game. I had just moved to Seattle from college in Missouri, and before that I lived in the suburbs of Chicago, where I grew up. I didn't know many people, and someone from work invited me over, and to be honest, I didn't have anything special to do that Saturday. Two teams of 2 players charged at each other. The level of violence was astonishing. As far as I could tell, it was a great excuse for the women on both teams to beat up the men on the field and get applause for it. Sometimes it was hard to tell who was a woman and who was a man. The women were wearing so much makeup and perfume. I was watching one man get hit so hard with a baton on the shin that it split open and blood was spurting everywhere, when I noticed someone next to me holding a glass with something in it and watching what was happening in front of her. "Do you think he'll ever want to play on the team again?" she asked, looking at me. "I know he won't." "Limping home isn't the best way to end something," I said, not very convincingly. She smiled at me, looked at the man being led off the field, supported by 2 teammates, and said, "Oh, I can think of a way to get myself into that situation, and it would be fun." But it wasn't fun. It was just nice to be there. She nodded and walked away. I felt as if I had been struck by lightning. Christy was nearly 6 feet tall with chestnut hair streaked with blonde, a slightly rounded face, beautiful eyes, accentuated by dark makeup and long eyelashes, which I later learned were also real. A proportionally upturned nose, stunning, cheekbones, and round, full lips that, if you focused on them, made you want to kiss them. Her eyes were incredibly blue and she blinked too often. She was perfectly proportioned. Nothing too much, nothing too little. Her butt was firm but not huge or flabby. Her hips were slightly narrow, but overall her figure was simply gorgeous. I watched her walk away and almost kicked myself for my clumsy reaction, shaking my head sadly. Another opportunity presented itself later when I stopped by a temporary bar that had opened near the field. They only sold cheap wine and beer, but the cocktails were delicious. I bought a glass of the best wine. Yes, I'm a snob. I know a lot about wine. My mother's sister, Aunt Nancy, used to be a wine critic, and I learned a lot from her, how to distinguish aromas, bouquets, and all the other nonsense that goes with wine tasting. I also learned that 95% of it is nonsense invented to impress people who don't know the first thing about wine. In the end, wine, like art, is what you like and what you don't. There is nothing in the world that makes a wine worth $100, let alone 1,000, except your willingness to pay for it. Having bought the only thing that didn't repulse me, I turned to leave, but found that the charming creature who had been talking to me earlier was standing behind me in line, fiddling with a small black box with something like a handle attached to it. She was so focused on it that she didn't notice me standing there, waiting patiently for her to notice me and let me pass. Finally, I cleared my throat. She looked up with some irritation, realized what was going on, and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just bought this and can't stop playing with it." She held up the box, which had some kind of gray LCD screen on it. "It's a visor. One of the new PDAs," she said, as if that explained everything. I just looked at her, and she said, "Don't mind me. Sorry, I'll let you go ahead." She leaned over, I walked around her and stopped. She picked up her drink, turned around, and now I was standing in her way. She just looked at me, smiling. "Well, we shouldn't meet like this," she said with feigned seriousness. I smiled back. "So what is a visor? Let's get out of the line and talk." So we did. An hour later, I learned that Visor was one of the new digital personal assistants developed by Palm. I learned that she was a gadget fan. I learned that she was a librarian and historian by training. I learned that she had only come because her friend was playing, and she didn't know how to turn him down without hurting his feelings. And I learned that she was free next Friday and really wanted to see the latest Harry Potter movie, but hated going alone. The hint was clear, and damn it, I got it. And that was the beginning. 4 weeks later, we ended up in bed together, and 10 months later, we were married. I could go on and on about the chaos of our wedding. All my relatives showed up, and it was like a Clampett family reunion. Her relatives were there too. They were way above us in social standing. They looked at us suspiciously through their double-bottled glasses, and then cheered when one of my relatives spotted them and dragged them into the crowd. I could go on and on about her family. Her sister, her brother in the army who was doing God knows what, God knows where, and God knows with whom. Her father and mother, long divorced but now friends. I had only seen her brother a few times, as he was often abroad, but he seemed like a decent enough guy. He was worried about his sister, but he wasn't blind to who she was. We had a mug of beer, those army guys know their booze, and had a few, well, I'd call them interesting conversations. I learned way more about her first boyfriends than I wanted to know. I could go on and on about our years together. We grew up together, had fun, learned about life, and generally behaved like teenagers when we thought we could get away with it. We were partners in every sense of the word. We went to clubs together, I read poetry, and she came and tried to do something. She drew and to be honest, I didn't even try. I could read and write, but that was the extent of my abilities. I didn't even know which end of a paintbrush to use for drawing. I tried to paint abstract pictures, and she would come up, look at them, and say something like, "I can see you're still 7 years old." And then she would laugh hysterically. Oh, my wife wrote her own spells. We both had modern mountain bikes and rode them a lot. There are a lot of bike paths around Seattle, and we took advantage of them. It was our main form of exercise, and we loved it. We even took weekend bike trips to Portland and Vancouver. I don't want this to sound like hippie nirvana. We fought. We had disagreements. God, that woman had such a temper. When she was angry, she could turn any room into Siberia. She had a vicious sense of sarcasm that cut deep, and when she was really angry, she did it right in front of other people. And I had no choice but to back down and look weak or make a scene in front of our friends. I tried both options, but neither worked. If I gave in, the problem would be solved quickly, but I would look like a fool in front of our friends, and if I argued with her, I would save my pride, but our new refrigerator and bed would last much longer. She knew exactly what she was doing. It was strange because to everyone else, she was just charming. Even if she didn't like the people we hung out with and could be sarcastic towards some of our acquaintances, she was very polite and extremely nice to them. It was only with me that she showed her strong disapproval when she felt it was necessary. In a way, I felt like I had a huge advantage. I was the only one she felt comfortable enough with to let her guard down. That's a compliment. On the other hand, I was sometimes seriously concerned about her mental health. But what annoyed her most was my attempt to use my damn Jedi tricks on her. Apparently, when I go into mediator mode, as she called it, I unconsciously adopt a certain posture and facial expression. She figured out very quickly what it looked like. And it was the one thing that, no matter what we were arguing about, was guaranteed to raise the temperature by a notch or two. It was at moments like these that the inevitable taunts like, "Your family sucks too," came into play. There was no argument that couldn't be escalated by dragging my family into it. She also realized that it wasn't worth dragging my mother into it. Proof of that was the weekend I spent in a motel because I kicked her out of the house. Although, to be honest, it's worth noting that it wasn't as if she often had no reason to yell. It wasn't easy living with me. And it still isn't. I'm moody. I can lose my temper over nothing, never get in my car when I'm having a bad day. I tend to look down on stupid people, and we're all stupid sometimes. And, as is well known, I like to go to strip clubs sometimes, even though I know what that means in terms of the exploitation of women. Like her, I was capable of provoking unpleasant situations, although I preferred to resolve issues behind closed doors. She knew when she had crossed the line. She realized it fairly quickly once her passion had cooled, and I often received many apologies, and the following week, I found it difficult to even get out of bed in the morning. I should tell you a little about our sex life. It was amazing. At least, I thought so. In the bedroom, we were the perfect couple. Or in the living room, or even in the backseat of a car one night in Victoria, Canada. We explored each other. Were honest about our fantasies. At least I was. It turned out she wasn't quite. Did risky things. Took her out to dinner without underwear and in a short mini dress, not knowing who she was showing herself to and stuff like that. We flirted a couple of times when I gave her a ride to a motel bar until one night some guy started hitting on her and I, wanting her to turn him down, explained the rules of life to him by grabbing his balls through his pants. And we never did that. Again. Again, I didn't do that. With what I know now, hell knows, maybe she did. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have sworn. Sometimes life gets the better of you, you know? Sometimes you're the windshield, and sometimes you're the bug. Despite all that, we were happy. At least I thought we were. We were happy. My job was sometimes stressful, and in some situations I had to travel for work. I was an employee of my company, and to some extent I had to go where the work was. But it never lasted long. And I always came home in the end, and it didn't happen very often. Christy sometimes traveled to a technology company that wanted to donate old equipment to its museum for future generations. And I was able to go there a couple of times as well, although sitting and watching a bunch of bearded men talk about how a hard drive the size of a washing machine used to cost $750,000 and now you can buy earrings with more storage capacity was not my idea of a good time. But I was playing golf in Arizona in the middle of winter, paid for by Intel, playing slot machines and doing nasty things to my wife on the hotel grounds. So what did I care? So back to the night I was telling you about, which is actually the subject of this story. I walked into our apartment looking great, threw my jacket on a chair and shouted, "I'm home. What's for dinner?" The lights were on, and I knew she was home. I had parked next to her little Mazda Miata MX-5 convertible in the parking lot under the building. The entrance to our apartment was in the kitchen, so I grabbed a beer, low-calorie diet beer as she called it, and wandered into the living room. She was already sitting on the couch with her legs wrapped around me, looking at me and biting her lip. But it wasn't her who stopped me. It was the guy sitting next to her. "Honey," she said weakly. I stopped and stared at her, not believing my eyes. Her body language expressed remorse, disappointment, nervousness, and determination, all in one pose. It's impossible to live with someone as close as we had lived for so many years and not understand what's going on. Well, apparently it is possible, as I discovered. But then and now, I could read the whole situation like an open book. The guy was young, with a smile on his face that was far from confrontational. Not a smirk, but definitely in the same vein. Maybe a cousin. It was classic arrogance, hiding some sensitivity on his part. Hell, for all I knew, he might even believe it. But his body language was a classic display of obsession and a need to cement it in subsequent events. It was clear to me without words that he was the alpha male in terms of possessing her. She leaned forward, and he leaned back, both arms spread out on either side of the couch, one behind her back. It was obvious that she was leaning forward slightly so that it didn't look like he was hugging her. But Einstein didn't immediately realize that she wasn't pushing him away. She was trying hard not to show it, but the harder she tried, the worse it looked. At that moment, she looked more guilty than remorseful. One look at the two of them helped me understand what was going on, at least partially. I knew what was happening. I didn't know where they were headed. To a confession and a promise not to do it again. To a breakup or something else. But I knew what had come before. It's impossible not to understand when you see something like that. I watched them for a moment longer, then sank into a chair next to the sofa, at a right angle to it. So I found myself next to this guy who was looking at me with what seemed like concern. I saw Christy frown as she watched me sit down, and I read the expression on her face. Their seating arrangement was really unfortunate. If I started to rage, she wouldn't be able to stop me. But now it was too late. They were clearly following some kind of script, and I had to hold back the anger building in my stomach to figure out what that script was. I took a sip of beer, sighed, and took a long drink. She bit her lip again, and I knew she was about to say something, but she didn't. I assumed it would be something like, "Yeah, beer would be nice right now." I smiled as a thought occurred to me. It's funny how people react to sudden stress. I've seen it before, and it always amazes me. People say the most ridiculous things, make comments, or raise issues that are completely unrelated to the situation at hand. It happens quite often at my job, and I always quietly wonder what exactly is going on in their heads at that moment. It's probably a complete denial of reality, and here I am experiencing it myself. "What?" Christy asked, a hint of irritation in her voice, which she quickly hid. I took another sip of beer and said, "I was just thinking, I know you so well. I can read your body language. I just thought that in a situation like this, it's impossible to hide your body language, especially when you know it so well. And then it occurred to me that that's exactly what you did, right? I had no idea." She wrinkled her nose slightly, then sighed. "Well, yes, probably. But that's the point of this intervention." "Intervention?" I interrupted, clearly hearing the sarcasm in the word. "Is that what you call this little incident? Why not come up with something more pleasant? How about we meet up? Have a heart-to-heart?" He lunged at me, not letting me stop him. It was pointless. I'm usually better than this. "Mike," she said reproachfully, using that two-tone way people emphasize two-syllable words. "Of course, dear wife," I said, emphasizing the word wife. "Go on. I don't want to interfere with your script." I glanced at the guy sitting next to her and noticed one of my beer bottles in front of him. The white rage I was feeling, really starting to feel, became even whiter. "Mike, you said it yourself. You didn't notice anything." I think it's fair to say that not only did you not notice anything, but there was nothing to notice, right? No signs, no decrease in affection or sex, right? She was right. I hadn't noticed. I hadn't been looking closely, but unconditional trust does that to you. Nevertheless, I am an observant person. My job depends on it, and I don't take it for granted. Even after 11 years, I still bought her flowers for no reason, sent them to her at work, took her out on weekends, bought her little things, anything to show her how much she meant to me. From my perspective, it was even more disgusting. My thoughts raced at 320 miles per hour, asking questions I didn't have answers to. Didn't I give her enough? What more could she want? What made her do this? Why? I have a hard time controlling my emotions. I would never get answers to my questions if I lost my temper, being a very refined person. I was smart enough to know that would happen sooner or later. But I needed answers first, and this was the way to get them. I wouldn't have gotten all the answers, and she would have lied to me about some of them. That was inevitable. I knew she still loved me and didn't want to cause me any more pain than necessary, so I knew she would lie about what she thought was right. It was human. But that was the point. I knew she loved me. I was 100% sure of it. Even when there was evidence of that love all around me, I was still sure of it. Maybe I was fooling myself, but I don't know. Some things in life you just know, and I knew she loved me. I think I was just fooling myself about the part of the sentence that was supposed to follow despite everything else. I just gestured with my beer, not yet trusting my words. Christy took this as a confirmation and continued in the most restrained voice she could muster. Logically, if I never gave you less than you always got from me, how could that affect you? I'm the same person I always was. And this, she pointed to the man sitting next to her, is just an extra dimension, that's all. Nothing changes. I still love you and always will. And I'll be everything to you that I've always been. And I want the same in return. You understand, don't you? You haven't lost anything. That's how it was. She really hoped I would agree. Look at it from her point of view. It was reasonable. She was trying to do to me what I do for a living. Make me see it from her perspective. Metaphorically compare it to her situation. There was a moment of silence. Then she said, "It's not you, dear. Not at all. I miss you very much. Please understand that. I admire you and always will. It's just—" "What exactly, Christy?" I asked, surprised that I hadn't already overturned the coffee table and injured someone. "You just wanted more than I could give you? Flowers, gifts, weekend trips, love." I smirked as I said the last word. "You just didn't have enough?" Christy began to lose her composure, her voice and face trembling. Tears welled up in her eyes. The guy sitting next to her leaned forward with a concerned expression and looked at me with disgust. "Christy," he said in a surprisingly deep voice, "baby, it's okay. Hold on, like we agreed." His hand, which had been resting on the back of the couch, reached forward and wrapped around her body. I relaxed a little. I leaned forward and said, "Hey, asshole, I can call you Dick, right? We're practically brothers, aren't we?" With that, I put my hand on his back, which was still resting on his knees. In one smooth motion, I grabbed his index finger and simply pulled it up and back. He had no choice but to give in or risk breaking his finger. Since his arm was wrapped around Christy, he had nowhere to go. And when I lifted his finger and began to press harder, bending it at an angle, he arched his back to relieve the pressure. He couldn't move because his arm was pinned behind Christy's back. "Mike, please," Christy said helplessly. I shot her a very quick, venomous look. "Listen, asshole, she's my wife. It doesn't matter what you think, she's still my wife." I emphasized that word, pulling my finger out even harder. "You're sitting on my couch in my apartment, drinking my beer. And, to be honest, smartass, I'm not impressed by your desire to be a white knight. You're here because this whore," Christy groaned slightly at these words, "wants you to be here, but I don't want you here. So shut up and don't say a word or it'll be worse. I've got your ass, and it takes 4 fingers to hold it. Don't piss me off anymore, or worse will happen to you. Got it?" He nodded somewhat dejectedly, let go of my finger, sat down, took his hand off Christy, rubbed his bruised finger vigorously, and looked at me with narrowed eyes. I didn't take my eyes off him. "Not a word, asshole. Remember that." I looked over at Christy, who had turned even paler, but then pulled herself together. "Mike, that wasn't necessary. James didn't mean to hurt you. He just came here for me, to support me, to let you know he's not a threat." "Really? That's nice for him. But he'd still be better off keeping his mouth shut. I'm not going to hit you, but damn it, I feel like hitting someone right now. And he's here." "Mike, please. Understand me. We didn't choose this, it just happened." "What happened, Christy? Did you trip and fall on him?" I had read that line in several stories, and it just slipped out. She sighed. "No, nothing like that. We were just working together, and it just happened. I'm so sorry, I don't know what to say. I love 2 men. I love you. I always have and always will. But I love James too. I can't explain it. It's not the same thing. There are some similarities, but I love you both differently. Please try to understand." I took another sip of beer, thinking about how to respond. I put the beer down and simply said, "Nonsense." She wrinkled her nose. "No, that's not true. You know I love you. You can't doubt that. I've always shown you nothing but attention and love, and you know that. Even when—" She hesitated, but then continued, "When other things were happening, I was sure that you would never get less than everything from me, and that will never change." She stared at me intently, as if she wanted me to challenge her judgment. She had already expressed her point of view, which meant she would continue. It was a classic leader's line. You speak as if the situation is already set. People believe it, and are looking for ways to adapt it to their reality. Not today, Christy, I thought. The thing is, what I do, all this vulnerability bringing people together around common themes, playing on their sense of importance and fairness. While it can work wonders in bringing people together, In the wrong hands, it can have the exact opposite effect. I don't do that. At least, I try not to. Although I can see what connects people, I can just as easily tear those connections apart. It's like a massage therapist. They know where the nerve endings are, and if they really want to, they can cause as much pain as they can soothe with the touch of their hands. I can do the same thing, but I really don't like having that ability. When you're angry, you can really destroy a person. And then I got angry, very angry. She had to know about my pain. She had to know that she was the one who caused it. She had to know the reality of her future. And I was going to destroy that future with words, right here, right now. Looking back, I'm partly ashamed of what I did and partly proud that I stood my ground and didn't give up. What I did was wrong. But on the other hand, what other choice did I have? I wasn't going to give her what she wanted because it wasn't what I wanted. Not at all. It was the exact opposite of what I wanted. There was no middle ground, at least in my mind. If we had decided together to open up our marriage, that would have been one thing. But we didn't, and I would never have agreed to that. I was a one-woman man. So what she wanted was, by definition, the opposite of what I wanted. I couldn't give her what she wanted, and she, sitting there with that jerk and acting like that, made it clear that this was all she was capable of. I wasn't going to give her that, so according to the rules of my profession, it was over, except for the CD collection. I tilted my head toward her. I knew she appreciated it. I knew how hard it was for her, how she had struggled with the need to do it. I knew that after this day, it would be hard for her to look at herself in the mirror. It was time to be hurt. What if I say no? What if I say I'm not going to live like this, Christy? That I don't want to share this and you shouldn't either? What about our vows? Don't they mean anything? She had the tact to look away. I understand your anger, Mike. I would have done that same thing. But I'm here to help you deal with this. Listen, this has been going on for a long time. You never knew. Now you know because I respect you, and I think you should know. I don't know what will happen next, but I know what I want. I think you can live with this. I think you can. What we have is too important to lose. You know that. You know we're better off together than apart. And it's not our business. I don't know how to make you understand that. It's like a second job or something. She had no idea how angry I was. She had all the classic symptoms of someone who had rejected the concept of understanding negative reactions because there was simply no way to deal with them or admit that you were causing them. Most people do this. When they do something wrong or unpleasant, they just ignore the number of reactions because otherwise it would really mean that what they did was seriously wrong. And nobody wants that because then they would have to do something about it. I snorted and said, "You really believe that, huh? How is that supposed to work, Christy? How are you going to calm my ego? How are you going to fix everything?" She blinked, but to her credit, she perked up. "I don't believe it. You should have told me anything you wanted." "Fine, no problem. Tell that jerk that you've had enough and to get the hell out of here. And tell him to delete your number." I leaned forward and looked her in the eyes. "That's what I want, Christy. Do it." She looked at me for a second, then turned away. "Nothing?" I asked coldly. For a moment there was silence. I could hear the minutes ticking away on the wall clock her mother had given us for our 10th wedding anniversary. "Mike, why can't you understand? Nothing needs to change. We're doing this here and now because I'm not going to run behind your back. It's killing me. Keeping up appearances. I need to be free and you want me to be free, don't you? And I respect you for wanting me to know. Please understand. Except," I finished for her. She nodded, and a tear appeared in the corner of her eye. "How long have we been married, Christy?" I asked sharply. 11 years, she replied uncertainly. "Right. And in all that time, I never once let you know that I was okay with it? That I was willing to put up with it? That I was willing to tolerate it and accept it?" She turned away again. Another point for Mike's team. She insulted my intelligence and her knowledge of me. Deliberate ignorance of reality. "No," she said quietly. Then she turned away. "But you can. I know you can. Our life is based on pure love for each other. If you loved me, if you really loved me, you would let me do this." "Really? Pure love. And this is how you show it? By falling in love with someone else. Is this what you call unconditional love? God, what is pure hatred in your world? Killing me first? This isn't fair, Mike. I didn't plan this. No one wants to hurt you. Well, good luck. You'll get her anyway. I'm sorry." "Me too. It's not that bad, is it?" I took another sip of beer. I didn't feel anything. It was just cold and wet. I thought about my next move. I knew it would be hard for her to come up to me. That's why she brought him with her. She couldn't have done anything else. But she had no idea how deep my pain was. Hell, even I had no idea. Christy, how do you think I feel right now? I asked quietly. She looked at James sitting next to her. He nodded encouragingly. I think you must be hurting. You're angry. Angry at me. For what I did to us, to you? But you don't understand. It's not what you think. It's what you're afraid of. Everything will be okay. We'll work it out. I still love you and always will. I need you to understand that if that's all you understand. I love you. You. I'll always love you. I'll always be yours. And you'll be mine. We just need to get through this. Adjust a little. And we'll be together forever. Lobsters, remember? She was referring to an episode of Friends that we had watched. We both liked the idea of the old lobster couple, and that year we even dressed up in lobster costumes for Halloween. I don't think you realize. I really don't realize. You broke my heart, you know that? Everything I thought our relationship was based on turned out to be a lie. The pain burst out of me, fresh and smoky. No, that's not it, Christy interrupted me. That's the point. It's not like that. I'm still the same. You're still the same. It's still the same marriage. There's just a new dimension, a new axis. You have to understand that. Nothing has changed. You should have known that, that's all. Why, Christy? Why should I have known? Why couldn't you just keep hiding it? I turned away for a moment because I really wanted to listen to her carefully. She looked a little stunned. Would you really have preferred that I keep hiding it? No, that's not what I said. I asked why I should have known. Because it was killing me, she said, a little confused, not understanding where I was going with this. I was disobedient and tried so hard to act the way I always acted at home, and it was unfair to you. Okay, so you were rebellious. Why? Why was it killing you? Well, because it was, she mumbled, realizing where I was going with this. Wrong, I added. She just looked at me. You hid it because you knew it was wrong and that I would be upset, hurt, angry, and all that if I found out. You knew you were behaving badly and destructively, and that's why you hid it. You hid your bad behavior because you knew it was wrong. There was a moment of silence. Then she said, we just had to find a way to tell you to lessen the pain. What happened that you want to tell me? I asked back, my lips tight with sarcasm. She didn't answer. But you still have no idea how I feel right now. All you've said are words. Oh, I'm sure it's hard for you. Very hard. Damn hard. None of you are giving anything up, are you? Just good old Mike. I have to put up with all this, and you get to have your way. You haven't lost anything. All you want is to have it all at once. And Dick Drip? Well, I don't know what he's losing. I suspect he has nothing. He gets you without any remorse or meanness. Wow. He looked at me and was about to say something, but I gave him a threatening look, looked at his finger, and pushed my beer away as if preparing for something. He obviously changed his mind. Mike, James wants me all the time, and so do you. I'm trying to do everything I can. Just leave me alone. I told him, just like I told you, that he can't have me the way he has you. I have 2 men to take care of, and I'm not denying you anything. You're just an idiot, Christy. Listen to yourself. It doesn't change me. Yeah, right. Of course you're changing. The very fact that we're having this conversation means that I'm not changing, as you so nicely put it. I no longer understand you exclusively, which I might add is not what I agreed to when we exchanged wedding vows. And neither do you. The best thing you can do is leave that bastard right now and frankly, throw yourself at me. That's it. I'm not sharing. Stop asking. You should know better. But you have no idea how much this hurts me. Imagine I had an affair. Imagine I slept with that cute redhead paralegal. Imagine that, Christy. Imagine I came home and told you I'd been in love with her for months and wanted to continue. I looked at her and realized that my words had gone in one ear and out the other. She was too caught up in her own situation to understand what I was saying. Then she opened her mouth and confirmed it. Well, I wouldn't like it very much, but I'd find a way to deal with it. Nonsense, that's not true. You're only saying that because you want me to accept the situation. Let's be honest. Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked that, should I? That was the end of it. Even she had to admit the honesty of that statement. You've destroyed me, Christy. You've destroyed us, don't you understand? I don't care what you say about nothing changing, it will change, and there's no escaping it. No matter what happens, you'll always betray me. Always. And nothing will change that. I'll never accept it. And I'll have to ask you to leave, since you clearly want things to continue. And even if you didn't, how could I ever trust you again? You hid this from me, very effectively, for I don't know how many years. If you had said, okay, I'm done, what would have happened next? How could I know that you hadn't decided to start all over again with the funny boy or someone else? How could I trust you now, Christy? But you're not going to stop, are you? You want this. You just told me you want this. That phrase hit her hard. It was obvious she didn't mean it. The thing is, people who make deals with the devil never keep them. You made your choice, and it's not me, right? Because if it were me, all this shit would be gone long ago. This is what I want, but you won't give it to me. Do you have any idea what that's like, Christy? Do you? No, of course you don't. You took everything I could give you, and then you took this bastard. And now you want to make this choice legal. Well, that's not going to happen. We've already made our choice. You can't change it. I don't know how my life will turn out, but one thing I know for sure. I will never trust another woman again. You've already done that for me, Christy, so thank you for that. Only you. I don't know if I'll ever be able to come to terms with what you've done and what you're trying to make me accept. I think it's unhealthy, but you're so blinded by the idea of getting everything in a short period of time that you sincerely believe you can have it all, and that I need to be convinced. Go away, dear. Life isn't like that. The reality is that you'll never know how much you hurt me today. Never. Not until someone does the same thing to you, but that won't happen, will it? Because you'll be too busy getting what you want. Oh, Mike, I'm so sorry. I don't want to hurt you. I really don't. Please, please, you shouldn't feel that way. Tears streamed down her face. What should I feel, Christy? Wasn't what I gave you enough? How does it feel to take out your anger on the person you're supposed to love until you die? Tell me. What should I feel? I don't even know what I did wrong or what you didn't understand, and you can't be honest and tell me, can you? You haven't been honest with me yet, have you? There was silence. Christy opened her arms and leaned forward hesitantly, as if she wanted to hug me. I raised my hand. No, thanks. The last thing I need from you is pity. I almost called her a bitch, but I needed to stay calm. I didn't even notice the tears filling my eyes until I wiped them away. It was strange to fight anger and pain at the same time. It was a strange combination, like when you want to push someone off a cliff, but you hold back and jump yourself. Thoughts raced through her head, bringing everything to its logical conclusion. She needed to make sense of the destruction she had caused here. Like most people who have done something terrible, she didn't want to face the truth, trying to downplay everything and find words that wouldn't sound so awful. She needed to do this because deep down she knew how bad it was and how destructive it was, but she didn't want to admit her responsibility. Once you admit it, you have an obligation to do something about it. Once you admit it, you have to fix the damage you've done, and she simply didn't have the means or the ability to do that. Some things can't be fixed. The more I convinced her of this, the more she had to take responsibility. And I knew her pride wouldn't allow it. She would suffer forever knowing it was all her fault and that there was nothing she could do to fix it. Christy cried a little more, and the guy next to her hissed as if he wanted to say something, but I looked at him and he decided to hold back. There was a pause, and I asked, "So I can do that too? Is that part of the master plan?" Christy looked up and frowned. I liked that frown. Her nose wrinkled and a crease appeared between her eyebrows. She replied, "I hope not. In an ideal world, it would be enough for you to have me at your disposal. In the past, that was always enough. But I realize that I'm not good at judging and saying no, so I won't like it very much, but I'll accept it. With reservations, of course." "With reservations," I whispered. This woman was unreal. How the hell could I have been married to her for 11 years and not notice this? What had I been smoking and drinking? Was love really that blinding? Was I really that stupid? "Well, you don't have to fall in love. With you, you mean? Too easy." She frowned again. "One more try. C3, C4, and C5, please. Maybe this time I could sink her ship." "No, I mean, it's different. If you want to try another woman, I won't like it very much, but as I said, I can't judge too harshly. I understand that. No, you have to be sure, as I am, that this is the relationship you want. The perfect relationship. That you're mine and I'm yours, the way it's always been." I couldn't help but laugh. "Except for the last, 3 months, 6, while you were here dealing with that clown Biffo? She sighed. It's not like that, Mike. I never stopped loving you. I just broadened my horizons, that's all. I like my horizons, thanks, I replied. She beamed, clearly taking this as my declaration that I wouldn't be looking for another woman. Great. Well, like I said, nothing will change for us. I love you just as much as I did before. Nothing will change. That statement alone made me furious, and I knew then that our relationship was over, just as much as before, meaning almost as much as it allowed her to jump into bed with another man. And since she did it once, she would do it again. What do I get, Christy? A part-time wife? Is that how it's going to be? Partly with me, partly with Captain Hook, I said, nodding toward James, who was still rubbing his finger. It won't be like that. We thought we could take turns. 2 weeks with you, a few days with James. You're not home half the time anyway. You never miss it. You get most of the time, just like now. You were there first. I shook my head and laughed the way you laugh when nothing is funny. You're crazy, you know that? How could I not have noticed that all these years? She even smiled back at me and said, Love is blind. True, I replied dryly, in the tone people usually use when they've said the last word. I thought about it again. I also wondered why I had even brought up the subject. But maybe this was one of the last conversations I would ever have with her, so we needed to discuss some things now. I was shocked to realize that this was how I felt, but after thinking about it, I decided that it was true. And that damn face, I said, nodding at James. Do you like that? He looked at her, then at me, smiled again, paused for a second, waiting for her confirmation, and nodded. I turned my attention back to Christy. So, just happened, huh? Nothing planned? You just fell in love? No plans or intentions? At that moment, I really wanted to give her a chance to speak, and I wasn't disappointed. Yes, you have to believe me. I didn't look for this. I was happy. I'm happy now. Only, even more so. Except for this moment, your pain hurts me too. When it came time to pay, right? Too bad it's me crying and not you, Christy. It's not easy for me either, Mike. I know how upset you are, how angry you are. But I know you're not a bad person. I know you'll be okay. Oh, you know that, huh? You know I could just forget about it, right? She turned away and didn't look back this time. You want to know what I think, Christy? I asked quietly. She looked back at me, her eyes wide with concern. Then she nodded hesitantly. Okay. I think this is complete nonsense from start to finish. I think all this protesting that it just happened is bullshit, and right now it's dripping on my shoes. You can't just fall in love like that, Christy. You know that. It takes effort. You have to do all the little things along the way. Spend time together. Seek each other out. Let the other person know you're interested. Jokes that no one else gets. Little glances and touches, personal and intimate things. That's how you fall in love. And it doesn't happen unconsciously. You make a conscious choice. At least it's a conscious choice not to stop yourself. You know that. I know that. Even this bloody face knows that. It was a direct blow to who Christy thought she was. She truly believed herself to be moral and ethical and thought she was making the right choice. I realized that for her, as for many other people, the phrase, "it just happened," was nothing more than an excuse. That's what people do when they don't want to admit that they are guilty of something they know deep down is wrong. Another question is whether they can stop. Every day people do things they know are wrong, but they do them anyway because they lack the moral strength to simply say no. This is especially difficult when it comes to forbidden fruit. The mind comes up with all sorts of reasons why they did what they did to justify themselves, but ultimately, most conscious people know what is right and what is wrong. They just try not to look at it directly. In my work as a mediator, it is never a good idea to draw attention to such situations. Trying to force someone to evaluate their bad behavior and admit it is not the best way to achieve a good result. One of two things always happens. Either the person accepts it and comes to terms with it, trying to integrate it into their self-esteem, and coming up with increasingly absurd reasons to explain their behavior, or they don't accept it and argue fiercely, reaching a logical and emotional impasse. And when that happens, they start to resist, often in anger. That's when anger and sabotage come into play. And again, no one wins. There are times when you can get through to someone, but it usually takes someone they absolutely respect, the right words at the right time, And it's very easy to get it wrong. And if the person is in deep denial, as I observed in this case, then you might as well be talking to a brick wall. In Christie's case, she was smart enough to know that this was wrong, and she knew that I wasn't wrong in what I said. It would have been very difficult for her to accept this reality if it had been pointed out to her. I did what I had done before, pointing out her responsibility for how I felt. With limited success, it seemed to me, but that was okay. Making someone realize their actions is a long process that they have to come to on their own. Almost no one realizes it the first time around. They have to live through it over time, on their own. Maybe you didn't want it, but you didn't stop it, did you? That's betrayal, Christy. Every action you took was an emotional betrayal, even before it turned into a dirty party. And you know it. The issue became clearer. I knew she would think about it for a few days. Next step. So your excuse is that I wasn't enough for you? Is that it? All I got in response was a look. She was starting to understand what I was doing, and she was scared. Words can be a powerful weapon if you know how to use them, and she knew I did. I see. So it never occurred to you that if all your love was in your numb finger, then by definition you weren't giving any to me? You somehow set a certain amount of love that I was supposed to get, and whatever was left over, you could give away as you saw fit, right? She replied, you can love your children and still love your spouse. Did your mother love you less because you have 6 children? That was unexpected. She fought back. It occurred to me that they were feeding each other lines. They were trying to prevent some of my inevitable arguments. In a way, you could admire their planning. I was flustered. Oh yes, that's true. And since we're on the subject, yes, I didn't get my share. Not at all. And you know that. But we're not talking about the children, are we, Christy? We're talking about the marriage. I spat out the last word and she flinched. Good. I'm so glad you were able to determine how much I should be getting. Please write an article about it. I'm sure many other couples would be interested to know how much that is. That's enough to make him turn a blind eye to the shortfall, isn't it? Another stern look, paleness around her eyes. She knew very well that I was going to destroy her. I asked, what do you think your sister will say about this? Have you thought about that? Just curious. Christy raised her head and stuck out her chin, a sure sign that she intended to dig in her heels. I think they won't approve, but if I explain to them that I didn't want this, but it just turned out that way, and that this is my way of being happy, they'll understand. You know they want the best for me. It was true. That was really how it was. Although I don't think Christy realized that they had no illusions about what she was willing to do to get what she wanted. On our wedding day, her brother had a talk with me. He advised me not to put up with her antics. She's beautiful, but she'll burn out quickly. Hang in there and she'll come around. He also explained that she had strange ideas, but when you encounter them, just laugh them off, and eventually she'll figure it out for herself. I don't think she would have gotten the reception she was hoping for. Yeah, I think you're just dreaming. I think once you explain that you cheated on me, which is exactly what you did, let's not kid ourselves. You were someone else's whore, and then you came into my house and lied about it. No hard feelings. There's nothing you can do or say to change that. Then I guess they'll have something to say about it. What about you? Do you think your brother would approve or understand, Christy? I put the words approve and understand in quotation marks. She lowered her eyes, then raised them again and said quietly, they'll understand. I know they'll understand. How did you know I'd find a way to accept it, huh? So far, it's 0 for 2, baby. Not a very good score. She sobbed and rubbed her eyes. But I wasn't going to give up. You know, even after I ask you to leave, you're still going to see that piece of shit. I glanced at James, who was looking at me with hatred on his face. Even he understood what I was doing. Leave? Leave? She muttered weakly. After all, you love him, don't you? That's what you said, right? And when I say leave, where will you go? Don't tell me you haven't planned it. I know I haven't. You're not stupid. You knew there was a chance I'd say no, and given how things were going, you couldn't say no, so you're leaving. Have you moved your things out yet? I'd take a look, but I don't want to get up. Her voice came from far away. We thought... I thought you needed time to come to terms with the new... She stammered, trying to start a new topic, ignoring the one she didn't want to answer. I won't give up, even if you make me leave. You're mine, and I'm yours. I'll always be there for you. You know that. This was getting more and more interesting. She was trying with all her might to fight me on my turf. She was trying to play on my emotions. She knew that in my professional life, I always found the best solution, and she was sure that she was offering me the best solution in this situation. So you plan to live with a man who consciously and willingly takes care of another man's wife, with a man who doesn't respect other people's relationships, with a man who is so outstanding that he sits on my couch, drinks my beer, and claims another man's wife. Is that the man? Is this the man you're committing your emotional life to? Are these your standards today? Wow. She glanced at James, who shook his head and smiled as if to say, "Don't listen to him." "Baby, she whispered before I leaned toward her. As threateningly and as quietly as I could, I said, "Last warning, James, or you'll be known as Jimmy One-Eyed. Got it?" "And he's tied himself to you," I continued. "A seasoned con man. Once a cheater, always a cheater, right? Well, you deserve each other, that's for sure. And I'm sure it'll be great at first. Lots of sex with no guilt. At least on your part. I doubt it'll be the same for him. But when it gets boring, and you know it will, it always does. What if he gets stuck at work? Or you? What then? You both know what you're capable of. How will it play out? I wonder who'll suspect whom." She glanced again at James, who shook his head, smiled faintly, and made a face that said, "That's nonsense." But the damage was done. Christy prided herself on her ability to read people. She prided herself on her ethics. Today, they had been damaged, and she was smart enough to understand the truth of my words. And what was worse, they had been said now. Everything was out in the open. It couldn't just be ignored. When it came up, and we all knew it would be the first thing that came to mind. In an emotionally charged situation like this, how could it not be? Thus, the relationship was doomed before it even began. Now the suspicion had been planted in her mind and it wasn't going away. In a sense, their entire relationship had been built on this lie, which was slowly sinking in, and now I had noticed it. Christy turned and looked at me with wide eyes. She understood what I had said, and I knew it hurt her. Only superficially for now, but with time it would go deeper. She left because I trusted her. She knew he could never love her, and I only emphasized that. Okay. Sighs. Another wound. I still wanted my pound of flesh. Then it was time for the final blow. I took another sip of beer, this time emptying the entire can. I even burped. It was done casually and at just the right moment. You know what? What really hurt me? More tears. In a situation where I needed to explain the new reality, she said very little. Deep down, you're a very evil person. And that incident passed quickly too. Whoever Christy thought she believed deeply that she was a good person. She had a saying, "Some people are good, they just did something bad." Almost no one was evil by nature. Most people got into bad situations and saw only one way out, or were forced into them. I had never thought about it before, but I recently came to the conclusion that Christy was a liberal with a warm heart. She was one of those people who never shifted responsibility onto others. I'm a liberal too. I believe in socialized medicine, caring for all segments of society and all that, but I also believe in personal responsibility. You may have reasons for what you did, and I can understand those reasons, but in my opinion, that doesn't absolve you of responsibility for what you actually did. Maybe you didn't have a girlfriend. Maybe women teased you. But that doesn't justify picking up a gun in a bar and shooting cheerleaders. Nothing justifies that. You did it for some reason, and those people are dead, just like they were 5 minutes ago. The fact that I understand your reasons doesn't mean that those people are suddenly alive again. She deeply believed that she was a good person who could do something bad, but that it was okay because she would feel terrible afterwards. The thing is, when someone you love deeply tells you things like that, when you desperately don't want to believe it, but deep down you know it's true, it penetrates the protective barriers of your mind. You know it's true, even if it's not actually true. I was one of the people she trusted most in the world, and I was calling her evil, and I was clearly sincere. And given that I had ridiculed her carefully constructed self-delusion, she knew I had reasons to believe it. And that meant she would almost certainly believe it too. It was the worst kind of self-deprecation when you're supported by someone you value and trust. The fact that I had an interest in saying it didn't matter. I was counting on it. She would believe it, and there's nothing stronger than the belief you instill in yourself. Okay? It's time to make her feel terrible. The thing is, Christy, every time you look in the mirror, you're going to remember this day. What you said, what you did, what you decided to do. The pain and destruction you caused, and all because you didn't want to fall in love. Well, screw her. I don't believe that, and I never will. This was all you're doing. Why, I can't guess, and I don't think you know either, but it doesn't matter. You did it, and here's the result. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to leave. And if you know what's best for you, you'll go. Take with you the knowledge that you are an evil person, that everything you have done here has been the embodiment of evil, and understand that all our friends and your family will find out about it. You know that I can explain it to them in a way that they will understand, and so can you. Think about it. Think about the consequences of your dirty deed. You killed the only thing you could rely on in life, and you alone are to blame, no one but you. You are, without a doubt, a truly evil person, one of the worst, who harms others and then tries to minimize your responsibility for your actions by downplaying the damage you have caused. I hope that such a person dies alone and in agony. If I were in his place, I would seek professional help. In this case, it's too late, but I would probably want to know the reason so as not to repeat my mistake. So go away with your serial cheater in your arms and live happily ever after, constantly wondering where each other is, and I'll sit here, drink myself to death, and wonder why the hell I didn't do it. I hope the sex makes up for everything you lost. Now, go away. I just sat there looking at her, and she looked at me. She was about to say something, but stopped, then whispered, "This is my home too." I lost my composure. I stood up as menacingly as I could and shouted, "Get out of here, you damn whore!" And I threw the empty beer can at the wall, where it shattered into pieces. Not quite the effect I was hoping for, but I was too angry to care. She staggered back, and James stood up looking at my face. Turning away, he picked up the clearly frightened Christy and dragged her toward the door. "Wait," I said, deciding to make one last attempt. At that moment, it occurred to me that this would be a fitting end to the evening. I walked over to her, and she recoiled. I grabbed her left hand and made her clench her fist. I ripped the wedding ring and diamond ring off her finger before she could stop me and stepped back, staring at the rings. Then I took off my rings, gathered them in my fist, and said, "Wait here." I walked from the kitchen straight to the bathroom by the front door, opened the door, and left it open. Glancing back at her pale face, I dropped all the rings into the toilet tank, then flushed without looking at her. "I think it's appropriate. You threw away our marriage, so let the rings go down the drain." I knew it would hurt. She loved those rings. She had spent 3 months looking for the right ones and had them made from her father's ring. It didn't give me any pleasure, but it was symbolic, and at that moment I genuinely wanted to hurt her. I'm ashamed of it now, but I have to be honest about how I felt at the time. She groaned at what I had done and muttered in a quiet voice, "No, no, 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 I didn't want to." "One more," I said, and with that, I punched James right in the face. I put a lot of force into it, and his nose cracked under my fist. Blood gushed from both nostrils, and he fell to the floor. Christy looked at him, then at me. I rubbed my fist and gave her a dirty look. "Now you can go. I'll change the locks tomorrow. Wait your turn." She was done. We were done. She knew it, and I knew it. She would never be able to look at herself in the mirror again without remembering this scene. She wouldn't be able to look her friends in the eye and would forever regret today's events, what led to them, and what it did to our relationship and to the person she thought she was. And at that moment, I felt no pity for her. I had been humiliated, betrayed, made a cuckold, and damn it, I was furious and out for revenge. It occurred to me that she might even do something drastic, but at that moment I was ashamed to admit that I didn't care. Again, that's hardly the right feeling at any moment, but I was so devastated that at that moment I didn't care. I may seem like an asshole, but as I said, I'm not easy to live with because of moments like that. She knelt down next to him, writhing, and I literally lifted him up by his hair. I opened the apartment door and without saying a word, pushed him out onto the street, blood dripping onto the wooden floor. Christy followed him in shock, and when they were out the door, I went back inside and slammed the door in their faces. I froze for a moment, staggering, then turned and went back into the living room, grabbing the bottle of peach-flavored vodka that was sitting on the kitchen table. I knew what I had said, but I wasn't going to drink myself to death, although at that moment I needed a few swigs to calm down. Life is for winners, and damn it, I wasn't going to be a victim, even though that's what I really was. I just had to find a way out. Tomorrow would be a new day. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.